Telling you, Johnny, they're going crazy there in Washington. There's the latest on the Will Rain Show. As many as 12,000 federal prisoners can get their sentence reduced under a new law that brought the penalties for crack cocaine more in line with those for the powdered form of that drug. Ketanji Brown Jackson, who's the vice president of or vice chairwoman of the commission who did the study, said, "I say justice demands this result." Sure it does. Hey, Ketanji, how about the defendants make the right choice by choosing not to become crack salesmen? How about that, huh? Congress last year substantially lowered the sentences for crack trafficking. Now, this isn't even for crackheads. Crackheads, I can have a little sympathy for them.
They have an addiction.
Well, people are weak. They're human beings. I mean, I got a softer side. Crack is disgusting, but you might have an excuse for falling in there. Evil companions, a bad life. Nothing really excuses it, but I'm willing to give you a little bit of a pass. But if you're trafficking in crack and you're making money from crack and you're inducing children to use crack, you're a scumbag, all right?
Well, what if I needed a job?
You're the lowest of the low. You're killing. It's worse that you're the same thing as a killer. You're the worst kind of killer. I can even understand a guy or a woman who gets fed up with their spouse and blasts them. Okay? I can understand that. I can't understand somebody picking up a gun and you say, here's $1,000, go blast so-and-so. That's cold. In that case, you're doing it not from emotion, but you're doing it for the money. And that's what crack traffickers do. They make a calculated decision to sit down and say, look at that little child there. I'm going to screw them up. I'm going to destroy their life. You sons of bitches ought to be hung. That's what You won't hear that on Sean Hannity. You sons of bitches ought to get hung. Honest to goodness. You're the filthiest, the lowest of the low. And Ketanji Brown Jackson, you ought to have your head examined, in my humble opinion.
Will reign for supreme dictator.
I say justice demands this result, says Ketanji Brown Jackson. And they always have to inject the racial element. You know why Congress changed the law? They were played. The 1980s law came down extra hard on crack. And that was seen as a blast at the inner cities, hence a blast at the blacks and Latino population. So they had to inject an element of race around drugs so that it made drug traffickers look like the victims of racial abuse. In other words, you're infringing on the civil rights of a freaking crack dealer dependent on the color of his skin. Now, if that doesn't make you sick, I don't know what does.
Unbelievable.
I'm telling you.
It's crazy.
Talk about a heartache. Did you see Johnny just put the picture up on the screen in the studio? I'm a big fan of history, as you know. Some of you may or may not know that my uncle was a tail gunner. He was killed in a raid over Frankfurt in a B-17. So I have quite an affinity and a love for that airplane. And wouldn't you know it, one goes down. Was it in a field in Illinois, Johnny?
Yeah, this is from the Chicago Tribune.
The Liberty Bell. It's one of the few remaining B-17s that are flying. It made an emergency landing in a cornfield. Unfortunately, there was a engine fire. And I think, from what I read, the crew is all safe, but it looks to be a total loss.
Right. Here's where the fire started. So
looks like an engine fire. They managed to land it in a field. Gosh, that's a beautiful airplane. I was driving to an air show once, and as luck would have it, one came right over my truck as I was on my way to the show and kind of banked over the highway. What a good-looking plane that was, and got so many crewmen home doing their duty during World War II.
We had one locally. We used to get to see that fly every now and then. That was pretty impressive. Right.
Yeah. beautiful airplane. In fact, I did a walkthrough on that one. It was eerie because, as I mentioned, I had my father's brother was, while my father was fighting his way through France, he got the notice that his younger brother was killed tail gunning on a B-17. And when I got aboard the plane, I looked in the back and I felt bad. I said, that's the last thing my uncle saw. They got hit with German 88 over Frankfurt. And I read the account, the pilot's debriefing. That was quite the raid. I'll get you some details sometimes, very interesting. They were jumped. I guess the last formations the German fighters were ready, and the German 88s on the ground had them lined up, and they got the living crap pounded out of them. And I think half the crew, I believe, on my uncle's plane, co-pilot, the right waist gunner, and he, the tail gunner, were killed aboard the plane. Some of the crewmen managed to bail out, but then it went into that final flat spin, and God bless them, all those guys.
This doesn't look good for the Liberty Bell. This is a huge fire.
Yeah, I don't think they salvaged anything in that. Let's give a thought to all those young guys, 17, 18, 19.
You know, that 19-year-old tail gunner who took that final ride down in a spinning B-17 over Frankfurt? If we only could, we'd love to shake his hand. Rain.